Hey everyone, welcome back to Topher Drives, where my week has started off great because I'm driving the 2024 Genesis G70 3.3T all-wheel drive Sport Prestige, the absolute top of the line Genesis G70. And if you're unfamiliar with this car, it's kind of Genesis's answer to the BMW 3 Series, the Mercedes C-Class, and similar cars. A dedicated sport sedan that it's gotten a couple changes throughout the years, but this thing has really not been around for that long. We've only known the Genesis G70 since 2019, and in 2022 it got the facelift that you're seeing right now, and it has a couple of minor changes for 24, being this Kawa blue paint, these new 19-inch wheels, which I think look excellent, and some things inside the car that I will show you in a little bit. But I thought today we would talk about what it's been like to live with this Genesis G70 this week, and we'll go on a bit of a business commute to downtown, because that is kind of what this car is all about. It's kind of built to combat the Germans, and they've kind of always been the kings of the business commute. So we will kind of explore that territory today, but we'll do some performance driving first. But even before that, I'll walk you around this thing and show you what it looks like inside and out. As I mentioned, this is the Sport Prestige trim level of the Genesis G70, meaning we get a 3.3-liter twin turbocharged V6, producing 365 horsepower and 376 pound-feet of torque. This is also the all-wheel drive model, and all of them now come with 8-speed automatic transmission. So even though this is the top trim, you can still get yourself into a turbo V6 G70 for a little bit less than what this car costs, which is $58,000. It's just about as expensive as you can get. The G70 itself starts around 40 grand. They also sell this car with a 4-cylinder turbo, and you can get it in rear-wheel drive as well with both powertrains. So quite a bit of customization and configurability with this Genesis G70. But I'm glad that we've got the top of the line one today, because that V6 is quite nice, and I'm usually not the biggest fan of V6s, but this one has been a treat this week. So let's show you some of the amenities here with the G70. Sport Prestige Pack also gets you a power trunk, which I used to be a hater of, but I've kind of come to realize that they are a bit more usable than I have let on in the past, mostly because, you know, if you're coming up to this car and you've got a handful of things, you're able to kind of just bump, you know, your power trunk maybe with your elbow or something. Okay, maybe not with your elbow, but you know, you get what I'm saying. You're able to kind of open this a bit easier. It gets out of the way easier than a non-power trunk. Pretty good room back here. We've got a cargo net, which I'm currently removing to show you what is under it, which is Ann's spare wheel. That is very good. We always love to see that in cars, especially in Michigan. And well, this is an 18-inch spare wheel, so it'll fit over the Brembo brakes on this G70 Sport Prestige. Spare tires are a big deal in Michigan, especially this time of the year in spring, when all of the roads are still recovering from the months of salt and plows and freezing and thawing and everything like that. I mentioned we get Brembo brakes. With the Sport Prestige, we also get adaptive dampers. We get a limited slip rear differential, and a number of other appointments inside. So let's step into the back seat. We can see that we have a gray interior in this car. And Sport Prestige gets you Napa leather. This is quilted. It's very nice. Now, this is not a strong suit of the G70. It's always kind of had a very small back seat. You can see that before I even step in here, but I will step in anyways. Now we have some cutouts on the back seat to allow you to have just that much more legroom. I'm 5'11", sat behind myself. I could sit back here, and honestly, there's a decent amount of headroom in the back seat of this car, which is surprising. I think that has to do kind of with the angle of this back seat and how you kind of sit down in it. We have a fold-down armrest with very attractive-looking cup holders. Folded this down yesterday, and I thought, wow, that actually does look pretty high class with this little silver trim on there. That folds down nicely. We have some vents back here. We don't get our own climate control panel, but at least you can point vents. You've got some USB-C ports, and you can annoy the passenger by moving their seat forward, backward, up, or down. Or, you know what I mean. You can move the seat in all sorts of ways. But in real terms, if you are sitting back here, you know, if you're being driven or something, you are able to move the seat out of the way, which is nice. Siri thinks I'm talking to her. We also get an Alcantara headliner with the Sport Prestige pack, which is beautiful. I love the contrast between our light gray here and the black. It all just kind of comes together very nicely. These back seats do fold down, giving you a passageway there through the trunk, and we can fold the other side down as well. So if you need to haul anything a bit larger, you are able to do so here in the G70, and you've got a pretty decent amount of room. You just wouldn't be able to haul anything tall, but if you need to haul planks of wood or something that is very long and skinny, you're able to do that here. Seats go up and down pretty easily, not much effort required there. The actual doors themselves feel okay. You know, you don't get a super nice bank vault shut to these, and also the door handles don't feel particularly expensive. They kind of just feel like you're opening the door on a Hyundai Elantra, but that is kind of what you get when the parent company of this is, of course, Hyundai Kia. So there are some things in this car that don't feel $58,000, but that is to be expected. Let's take a look at this V6, which I think is pretty dang attractive looking. They've done a good job presenting this with these really nice silver strut braces and this cool turbo badged engine cover. So this is our 3.3 liter twin turbo V6. This is a pretty fresh G70. It's got about 2,000 miles on it. We're running on some Michelin Primacy all-season tires. We have a 225 section in the front and a 255 section in the rear. Now, this is an all-wheel drive car. It is rear-wheel drive bias, and with that ELSD in the back, it does perform nicely, and we'll show you that when we do our bit of performance driving. But before we get into the car, I want to show you a couple of little quality issues here with the back of the car. These little trim pieces that go in the middle of the taillights looks like are starting to kind of unstick. I don't know if this is from like going through an automated car wash or something. Sometimes things can get caught, but regardless, that shouldn't happen. So, but otherwise, seems to be pretty well put together. Here we can see up front these beautiful Nappa leather quilted seats. I do love the seats in this car, and they are pretty cozy as well and soft. Let's start it up. We have an active exhaust in this car, so when we put it into Sport or Sport Plus, it does open those valves. You can see in here we have a couple of other changes for 24. Biggest one being we have a new climate control panel down here below our vents. We used to have 3 big chunky knobs to control our climate. Now we have this kind of typical Genesis haptic touch feedback menu, which works fine. I haven't had any problems with this week, and you know, everything is still within one click. I think it just kind of modernizes the interior a little bit, and we do still get knobs for our temperature, so I don't think they've taken all of the knobs away. We also get a frameless rearview mirror up here, which sounds silly to even mention, but I mean, just look how nice that looks in this interior. It kind of brings it up another level. Alcantara headliner, as I mentioned. We have a power sunroof, which is massive. It's absolutely huge. It's like the whole roof of the car goes back. So that's fun. It's kind of a weird split for me in this interior because there are some materials that I really do like and I think look nice, but then there's other things up here that are a little bit disappointing. Like the top of these door panels are just kind of nothing scratchy plastic. The top of the dash, yes, they have some stitching in here, but it is artificial. This is a plastic dash pad as well on the top. Where the real leather begins is kind of halfway through the dash here. This is all very nice soft leather. Down by your legs, your knees, everything is stitched in leather. The steering wheel is very nice leather. Even the airbag cover has this really nice white stitching to go around our Genesis badge here in the middle. So there are some nice things in here. We have a half digital cluster, which is a bit strange, but the main reason is because This has the turn signal cameras, which take up one of the gauge pods when you put your signal on. I really, really like the way that this analog gauge looks, and I'm starting to appreciate these more now that every single car I get into has a digital gauge cluster. So I think that this looks really classy. And then on the right side, it just kind of looks a little bit cheap. Nicely reactive infotainment screen, typical for a Genesis or a Hyundai. We have our drive mode selector, which is going to go back into comfort to start the video. Why don't we get out of the parking lot and we'll hit the road and we'll talk about what this thing has been like to live with this week. We'll do a bit of commuting in this thing. Now we have kind of this pistol grip shifter, which does look pretty cool in here. And I like that they still have something down here that isn't just a knob or buttons. It does have a little bit of movement, and you can see that here where it kind of locks into place. It's not too hard to get used to after using a couple of times. We have nice driveline tuning in this car, very nice throttle response. Brake tuning, progressive, everything is nice. The steering is a bit heavy even in comfort mode, but if you're somebody that likes a little bit of a heavier steering feel, then you will definitely enjoy driving this Genesis G70. We still do not have wireless Apple CarPlay in this car, so I'm going to plug my phone in and leave it there in the cup holders. You do have a wireless charger right here in front of the shifter as well if you like to wireless charge, but if you're running CarPlay, you're charging your phone anyways, so it's a little bit pointless unless you have a passenger in the vehicle. Or if you are a true businessman and you have two phones, I suppose you can charge one on the wireless and charge one with the cord. That's a real businessman behind us there. Check that out, E46 BMW. I like to imagine that the drivers of those are kind of graduating into these at this point because, I don't know, this feels like a more simple, true sports sedan than the new 3 Series does. This still has buttons and knobs and I don't know, it just feels a little bit more old school, which I do like. Let's try out some, ooh, that was a weird shift. Let's try out some passing power here. Really nice load on torque. You don't have to drop gears, and this 8-speed is tuned really, really nicely. Before we get into our highway impressions, we're going to put this into sport and we're going to show you how this thing performs. Now, when you go into Sport Plus, it does disable traction control. That leaves stability control on, but you are able to disable that as well. And I'll show you how in just a second. This thing is quick. I mean, not only is it quick, it's engaging, it's fun to drive. And we have some sports programming in this car as well, including launch control, which I wasn't aware until I went to do a boosted start yesterday, and a little launch control blurb came up on the screen. Basically just Sport Plus mode, foot hard down on the brake, foot hard down on the gas, launch control ready. Can fully disable our stability control if we hold down on our traction control button here below the drive mode selector. And after that, you're on your own. There is nothing left in this car to prevent you from binning it. But it does mean that you can get a little bit of angle, even with this being all-wheel drive. It is still rear bias, so it'll stick the tail out a little bit still. see how much fuel I can burn before we get on the highway. How about that? Okay, I've had my fun. What I wanted to show you guys is how engaging and how simply fun to drive this car is when you're not on a commute, when you're not daily driving this thing. I love cars that are very usable in the real world, but then you can flip a switch and you can go and do that with them. So don't think that this is just a glorified Hyundai Elantra or something of the sorts. I mean, this is a serious performer. The chassis is so dialed in, it's so controllable. You've got a good amount of steering feel with this thing as well, especially in sport when it weights up. And it is just really, really fun to drive. So let's turn traction back on. We're already back into comfort mode. Let's jump on the highway. Let's do a bit of commuting with this Genesis G70, and we'll talk about what this car is really like to live with. I will say, once you do drop it down into comfort mode, it quiets down. It starts shifting itself below 2,000 RPM, so you can kind of barely hear it doing anything. It closes that valve in the exhaust. And riding on these Michelin Primacy all-season tires on 19-inch wheels, which I do appreciate, we don't have 20s or 21s or something ridiculous, it's a pretty comfortable car. You know, with these adaptive dampers in comfort, the ride is still firm, but it isn't crashy. You know, the only time where you get jolted a bit is if you're going over a speed bump, going up into a driveway or something. You can kind of really feel that stiffness. But over just potholes and general imperfections in the road, this car does behave very nicely for daily driving. You can tell that there are people on this Genesis engineering team that are drivers, and the Koreans have kind of stole a lot of the Germans from BMW and other companies, so you really can see that in their cars. It's a nice kind of refresher because they're interfering with the parking sensors on that Tesla currently, but ignore that. It's a nice refresher driving this car, and I'll tell you why. Genesis has only had a few years to perfect this car, to get it out and to get it competing with the BMW 3 Series, and you almost feel that freshness in this car. It's like driving an early rendition of a 3 Series, of a C-Class, when they were just kind of figuring things out, and you still kind of have that driving purity here in this car, and they're not super focused on technology and even really being overly luxurious in this car. I mean, this car feels more like a sports sedan than a luxury car, and it's just cool to have something like this on the new car market still, and I hope that it does stick around. But being that it is a Genesis, that it is under the umbrella of Hyundai, for one, it's beeping at me, because they always do that, and they always will. Now, of course, Hyundai driver aids don't protect you from Durangos riding up on you, getting 6 inches from the bumper, but they are very easy to use. One push of this little cruise control button on the top left button stack on the steering wheel. That was a loaded description for that, but you all know what I'm saying. Puts you into cruise control. We have steering assist, we have lane keep assist on this car, both of which are easy to toggle on and off. You can hold to put lane assist on. I now have lane assist, steering assist, and I have adaptive cruise going, which means that this car is essentially driving for me. It doesn't even really yell at you to touch the steering wheel that often, which means situations like this in rush hour traffic right now are really quite all right. I mean, we're going 60 miles an hour, and the car is just kind of doing it all for me. This is the nicest thing I would say about Hyundai's, Genesises, Kias. And they've been like this for a while, and I mean, these systems are only going to get better, and they have, you know, in the past couple of years. They've gotten the calibration down really nice with these, and they just do a really nice job. I'm going to be quiet for a sec. I'm going to let you guys observe NVH here on this G70. All right, so let's talk comfort. What's this thing like to commute in? Well, I already prefaced earlier with my enjoyment of these seats, and that still stands, and that partially has to do with the fact that we do have a good amount of lumbar adjustment in this seat. We can also adjust the bolsters. You've got this little toggle, you can switch back and forth, bolster or lumbar. I still have not touched the steering wheel in so long. All right, I'm gonna have to now because I have to get over. And this does not have the silly lane change assist, which is actually quite nice. I don't really enjoy that too much. So good amount of adjustability here on this driver's seat. How is leg comfort if you are to be in a bit of a relaxed position like I have been for the past couple of minutes? Well, unfortunately, we've got a bit of a hard plastic here on the driver's door panel, so your leg is resting up against that. On the right-hand side, we have a little bit of squish here from this leather-wrapped panel on the upper end of our console, but overall, it's kind of that Lexus IS effect in here where it's a bit of a smaller sports sedan, and the way that they've engineered this dashboard, it kind of sticks out and protrudes into your driver's compartment. So you do, after a little bit of sitting in this car, feel a bit claustrophobic. It's not to the point of the Lexus IS, because I think we have a bit more headroom and a bit more openness in general in this car. So it's okay. But if you're somebody that likes to sit with your legs spread, just know that you will get a bit uncomfortable after a while. Luckily, you don't have to sit like that. You can keep your legs inwards and you'll do just fine. Elbow comfort is really nice. We've got a really squishy center console. I'm going to abandon my cruise control here. Turn everything off. There we go. And the left elbow as well, not quite as squishy, but we do have pretty good comfort for both elbows. To wrap up highway manners here before we jump off the highway, I mean, this thing just does a nice job. Come in here with the brakes, get behind to exit the highway here. Higher speeds, floats down the highway. Wind intrusion, road intrusion is really, really minimal with this car. Nice physical controls to just stick your map on the screen if you want, one press of a button. Really nicely placeable. This is just a nice size. This is kind of the size of car that I really enjoy living with. Very easily maneuverable, placeable, everything. Just easy to drive in general. Oh goodness. All right. Get me away from this person immediately. Thank you. Use the torque there and try not to crash into a Prius C. Sometimes driving downtown, like, I know this isn't super downtown-ish yet, but sometimes driving in environments like this is fun because you really have to use your brain and, you know, kind of get around everybody in the most efficient manner possible without crashing. You can see here there's a gap, so we'll be minding to make sure nobody's coming out. They're not, so we'll continue. Right here, we've got a Lexus RX sticking into the lane. Luckily, there's a bus there, allows me to get through easily. You know, just try to entertain myself. It's the little things in life to, you know, keep yourself going, I say. Something else important to point out, we have a sunglasses holder in this Genesis G70, which I feel like is something that's becoming less common. Nice click to that, too. So we have a Lexicon sound system here in this Genesis G70, and you know that we can't go on a commute without testing our sound system, so we'll go ahead and do that now at the same time as we show you what our Apple CarPlay looks like here in this G70. Whoever had this before me did not configure the star button, so we'll do that now. Configure that to our phone projection. Also nice. That's what I love about having these physical buttons here, is that, you know, you can go map, Apple CarPlay, seek your tracks. Still have a volume knob on this, which is nice. So as we enter downtown here, let's go ahead and test out our sound system on this Genesis G70. Now, this is a pretty decent sound system, and I'm never really a huge fan of anything that you'd see in a Hyundai or a Kia. They never really hit the mark for me, but Lexicon is kind of where it's at for these, and you can only get these in a Genesis. The GV80 is where it's at for Lexicon. I mean, that is a fantastic sound system, and this one is pretty good. It's definitely not the crispiest sound system that I've heard, but I think for a car that's around 50 grand, $60,000, it's not too bad of an effort. So there's that. You guys are able to hear it as well, so you can let me know what you think. So let's talk about actually purchasing this car. It's 58 grand, and in today's market, what else can you get for 58 grand? Well, I don't really think you can realistically get a BMW M340i xDrive for that anymore. I'll put the cost of that right here. I want to say it's definitely in the 60s to obtain one of those. So this would be a little bit cheaper of a choice. This would also compare to something like a C43 AMG, an Audi S4. And while those cars, you know, they've been around for longer, they have been the enthusiast choice for quite a while. A lot of those German companies are really starting to focus more on the tech side of things and really trying to, there's an Alpha 4C, very cool. They're really trying to kind of blow away their techie customers. And what I really appreciate about this Genesis G70 is that it just feels very pure in the way that it feels like they've just tried to make a sports sedan, and that's it. I mean, end of story. So I really like this car for that, and I think that in a weird kind of twisted old school way, this is now the enthusiast choice. So if you want something that's bonkers fast with, you know, a very smoothed out and almost perfect powertrain, you're still going to go for that BMW M340i. And I'm not doubting for a second that, you know, isn't a fantastic car.
Please select an event from the screen. Welcome. Please.
Ooh, hit my head on the window. I was just about to say, it's a very usable size to get yourself a ticket out of the little machine. Okay, let's test out maneuverability before we wrap up on the roof of the parking structure today. I'm feeling all right after my little commute to downtown. I can park in the structure and walk to my office job, and after I come out at the end of the day, I will be looking forward to getting back in the driver's seat and commuting home again in my Genesis G70. Proper dog right there. Hello, ma'am. Pretty good turning circle on this car. And it's a pretty quick rack. You don't really have to do too many turns to get yourself, you know, perhaps around a roundabout. You really only have to give like this much steering angle. And that's pretty much a wrap here. And there are quite a few other people up here, including a C63S. So why don't we park near that? Because that'll be a cool thing to look at as well. I am so bad at judging these parking spots. Let's use our parking cameras. Oh, I actually did a pretty good job. Wow, I'm proud of myself. Can use that front camera to see how close we're getting to the wall. Apply our parking brake. And that's it. 15.5 mpg on our commute today. Granted, we did some pretty exciting driving there at the beginning. This thing's rated to do 20 mpg combined. This week, I've got to say, I haven't really been seeing that. I've been getting more so around 16, 17 mpg, which, to be fair, is what this is rated for in the city. That will do it for our little drive today in the Genesis G70. I would love some more, feedback and idea from you guys on what sort of other things you'd like to see me do in these cars, because, you know, I have them all week and I would like to be able to show you guys what you want to see. I think it's fun to do these commutes, these like living with videos, just because it gives you kind of more of a real world perspective on the car. But if there's anything else we can add into the lineup, that would be fun as well. I like this G70 a lot. The only things I really don't like about it are some of the material things. The feeling of the door handles isn't great, but I mean, overall, it's just a really, really nice, kind of unsuspecting car. So, you know, you could have yourself a C63S. That thing is excellent looking. I love that. But the G70 still exists, and in my opinion, it is still a worthy option, a worthy choice. So let me know in the comments if you guys have any questions about the G70, and I'll do my best to answer them for you as I've been living with this thing this week. So thank you so much for watching. We'll see you in the next one. Take care.